Her knees were spotting blood from the rug burn. Jasper moved to reach for the pitcher to pour another glass, but Sean again grabbed him away. He kept his hold on Jasper and started to pull him from the room, from what they were witnessing. Maggie must have noticed their retreat, because she said in an overly sweet tone,
"Oh, boys, you don't need to leave. She's just a very clumsy girl."
"We'll come back later," Sean said, and they were out the door. But Jasper dug in his feet on the other side of the door, looking at Sean like he couldn't believe they were leaving the little girl behind. From inside the room they heard Maggie taunting.
"Do you see what you've done now, little miss? You've made your friends uncomfortable with your display. Are you happy with yourself? No one cares about your silly tears. It makes them feel bad. Don't you feel bad for making them feel bad? You should feel bad for making them feel bad." "Yes, Mama." "You don't treat friends that way." "No, Mama. Did you just sass me?" I didn't, Mama."
Jasper looked up at Sean and whispered, "We can't leave her." Sean shook his head, his expression grim. "You're my cousin, Jasper. I can't let anything happen to you. I don't know that girl from nothing." Jasper's expression fell. Sean wished he didn't have to disappoint Jasper, but if they intervened, his cousin might be hurt. He couldn't risk that. That night, though, when he escorted the bruised little girl to her room, he didn't shove her in. Instead, he simply walked her to the door and said, "You know I wouldn't trash you. I'm too big, I'd hurt you. I just don't want you to go in our room." Her green eyes came up from the floor as she looked at him, her forehead bruised and swollen to match her discoloured cheek and eye. She nodded solemnly as she closed the door between them. He tried to forget about her after that, tried to convince himself she wasn't their responsibility. After all, he hadn't been mean to her. Jasper seemed to have forgotten about the incident the next day. He awoke with his usual abundant energy, ready to engage in the important business of being a boy in the summertime. Sean and Jasper were having a lively discussion about football at lunch when Jasper's mother walked into the room, scanned it, looked at the boys and then walked out. Moments later, she reappeared with the girl in tow, wearing one of 3 dresses she owned, all too small for her already too little frame. Aunt Peg snapped out,
"You boys, after wanting to tell me why I found this child sitting inside the door of her room, instead of at the table having her lunch. You had the responsibility of getting her to the table, and you failed now."
2 heads whipped around, mouths agape. Jasper looked to Sean. Sean looked at Britt. His jaw tensed. A look of resentment came over his face.
"I wasn't hungry."
Her voice was small and timid, inserting itself into the room. He and Jasper looked to his mother to see if she would buy it. Aunt Peg turned and looked down at her.
"You're such a tiny thing. How can you not be hungry, wee Britt and Delaney?"
Britt's eyes went from Sean to Jasper and then to Peg.
"I can go days without eating, Mrs. Dunn."
She said it with pride. The food in Sean's mouth turned to ash at her words. He swallowed hard but had to drink water to get the food to go down his throat. Aunt Peg dropped down into a squat in front of her and lightly touched her bruised cheek.
"You don't go days without eating here, wee thing."
Britt nodded with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jasper and Sean exchanged a confused look. They'd not seen her smile before, fake or otherwise.
"Now, you eat something. You need to fatten up."
She stood up and urged the girl forward. She looked at the boys.
"I'm sorry, I yelled. I assumed you were misbehaving and ill-treating her."
Sean looked at Britt, thinking it was a peculiar statement considering she had clearly had plenty of ill treatment that hadn't come from him and Jasper. Britt slid into the chair next to Sean. He offered her a wary side-eye. Aunt Peg placed a few sandwich squares and raw vegetables on Britt's plate. She stroked Britt's uncombed hair, smiled over at her son, and left the room. As Britt reached for one of the sandwiches, Sean challenged her. "Why'd you lie? We'd have caught trouble if you told on us." Her big green eyes settled gravely on him, and she said,
"I wouldn't want to see you hurt."